All right, so if you have a soil BMP and you look at our concern list and it's telling you that drainage class is an issue, or the hydric soils could be an issue, or flooding or ponding could be an issue, what you want to do is look at some of these things to see if those are going to be concerned at your site. So the first one I want to look at is specifically related to hydric soils. So under suitabilities and limitations for use at your area of interest, you're going to go down to land classifications and you're going to drop that down. So when you drop down land classifications, you'll go down here and you can see hydric rating by map unit. So what we want to do is you'll click the view rating. And this is again color code your areas based off of that hydric rating. And if we want more information about what the hydric rating means, we can always scroll down below and it's going to give us a description. So in this case, when we're looking at the hydric rating by map unit, it's going to give you a rating from 0 to 100. And so that 0 to 100 is the percent of that soil that is expected to be classified as a hydric soil. So in this case, we have several that have no percentage of being hydric soils, but we also have some that are very high. So in this case, when we're looking at a Kincora loam or a Toxaway silt loam, we're going to have very high percentages of those soils that are going to be considered hydric. Those will show up on our map as red coloring. Green coloring usually means that they're very low risk of being a hydric soil. So these water type things, we're talking about the hydric rating, flooding, ponding, depth to water tables are all kind of interrelated. So that's the reason I've kind of clumped them together. So most of the time when you see any of these popping up as a concern, all of them will be a concern. So that's the reason we're kind of clumping them together. So if we want to look at some of these other ones, those are going to be found under soils, properties, and qualities. So we're going to look under here. And the first thing we're going to go under is soil qualities and features. So if we look at soil qualities and features, what we're going to look at is our drainage class. So when you're talking about drainage class, this is related to soil science terms, and we're talking about what drainage class rating that they have based on our soil science, where we're looking at redoxomorphic features in a depth from the surface. So in this case, we have a lot of different drainage classes found in the area that I have, from well-drained soils all the way to very poorly drained soils. If you need more information on what those mean, you can always reach out to me. I'll be glad to kind of go over our different drainage classes and what those indicate. In general, most of our practices, we're looking for things that are well drained or moderately well drained. If we start getting things that are very poorly drained or poorly drained, those usually means that we're going to have to do some sort of drainage, or maybe getting into a wetland situation. And so in those cases, we're going to have to probably have someone come out and verify that what we're seeing on the ground is what we're looking at, and is that going to be an issue? And whatever the practice is, do we need to find a different area to go to? So those are some things to really look at when these things pop up as a concern. The next thing we're going to look at is kind of related to our drainage class, and we're going to see that is our depth to water table. So depth to water table and drainage class kind of almost mean the same thing. It's just a different way to kind of say things. So whereas the drainage class is a term that we're using, and we're breaking things into terminology and kind of clumping things together, when we look to depth to water table, we're going to be looking at the specific depth to which we should be finding these redoxomorphic features. So in this case, if you see something that's greater than 200, then that means we're going to have a well-drained soil, versus something that's like 15 centimeters. That means we're getting into those more poorly drained soils. So again, depth to water table is going to be more specific on our depths than what you would have if you're just going off of our hydric soils and drainage class. So this is going to be very more specific. Again, you want to go out and field verify all of these things. If you don't field verify these things, or if you go to, for example, where it says this Bradson gravelly loam is, and you dug down and you saw redoxomorphic features in the soil or water table that seem to be really close to the surface, then this rating clearly is not going to be accurate, and using the Bradson Gravelly loam and that information to plan your BMP is not going to work. So the next thing you want to look at is our flooding frequency and our ponding frequency. And so these are going to be very similar. So when we look at our ratings for these, our flooding frequency is just how often you can expect this area to flood. So typically, if we're next to a stream of any sort, those are going to have higher ratings than areas that are upland. And that's what we're seeing here. So when we look way out here where we're away from the stream, we're going to see that those are the occasional. If we look at our Bradson Gravelly loam, again, that's up here. It's way, way far away from those streams. You're not going to see that flooding as often as these other sites. Ponding, on the other case, is a little different. So let's look at that. We're going to look at our rating here. And so what we see here is that none of these actually have a rating for ponding. And so ponding is standing water. So in this case, it's a lot of relation to if it's at a lower slope area with a low infiltration rate, that's when you're going to start having a lot of problems with ponding. These tend to be clayier soils that are not going to have good infiltrations, and they have water that's flowing actively towards their areas. So in this case, none means that there's not a probable thing of ponding, all the way to frequent, which means you're going to have ponding occurring often, more than once in 2 years.